welcome to another episode of The Spoken You with Jeff and Brett. Hello, everybody, and welcome. So glad you could join us here on The Spoken You in our discourse to seek knowledge. From knowledge comes wisdom, but it's preceded by questioning, and that's what we're here to do. Today we might get lost in our conversation, but it's not without intention because we're here to discuss wandering. I'd like to start off this topic today with a few quotes, just because every time I hear the word wander, that's what it elicits to me. It elicits these heroic quotes about adventure and travel, and I think that's a good way to get the audience's mind going for what we're about to talk about. So I'm going to rattle off a few quotes here and just put everybody in the mood. First quote, if we were meant to stay in one place, we'd have roots instead of feet. Wandering does not show that you're lost, it just says you like to explore. Not all those who wander are lost. Things are so hard to figure out when you live from day to day in this feverish and silly world. Live, travel, adventure, bless, and don't be sorry. There was nowhere to go but everywhere, so we just kept on rolling under the stars. The world is big, and I want to have a good look at it before it gets dark. We must take adventures in order to know where we truly belong. Wandering reestablishes the original harmony which existed between man and the universe. So the things that I kind of take away from some of those quotes are trifold. One, I kind of, when I listen to these quotes, I hear a reflection of society about people that do attempt to wander are looked at as being lost, confused individuals, and that kind of is reflected in the quotes, and that's something I'd like to tackle today. I also get a sense of this idea of traveling versus adventuring versus wandering, and what the kind of the difference between those words are, and how they're reflected in society. And lastly, the idea of wandering and self-discovery, and kind of touching base on is there a primal relationship to wandering and who we once were and how it kind of exists in the modern world today. So I guess Brett will field, and we'll start with kind of start with the first one in my opinion. That's a good place to start, is these quotes and being looked at as lost. I mean, you've wandered in your day. Do you feel that you got a sense from people around you that you were lost, or what you were doing was confusing to them?
Ramble on! What's up there, Jeff? Hey, man. Dude, met a lot of amazing people who have made the distinction between direction and destination. There's been a lot of times in my life where I woke up thinking I'm going 200 miles south with a caravan and ended up going 300 miles east. And it's because there's a flow when you allow yourself to be in it. And the need for a plan, the need to control life and maybe even suck the life out of life by not surrendering to it. I mean, even the word wander itself actually goes back to the Old English to mean the wind, or wand. So I think there's something within us, deep and ancient, that feels called to the horizon. I had worked with a professor of urbanology for quite a while who was saying that before cities, 10,000 years ago prior, we used to wander as humans in large groups. There were fishermen, there were hunters and basket weavers, and there was no marriage. People would just screw their brains out. They had no connection between sex and reproduction, so there was no ownership of child, there was no family, and humans used to wander the earth in large groups. And I feel like there's some component within us that still beckons to the caravan, to the Bedouins, and that even though there's a lot of hype around gypsies, for example, and some of them are sedentary. You know, there's that mystery. So I think there are the sedentary people. When you rock up in a caravan in a town full of, people living in the suburban or urban cubicles, I think it threatens a lot. You know, you smell different, you look different, you have, that wily hair and wily eyes of freedom. And I think it does definitely threaten a lot of people's comfort. In a lot of ways. So, I think there's a huge community of people that are supportive and are waiting for you to join them if you choose to hit the open road. But on the same token, you may not get the support from your loved ones or your friends if they're afraid of breaking the shackles of sedentary living.
I've experienced something similar in my travels, and I think you touched on this in one of our previous episodes about when somebody wanders or somebody travels or adventures, and we'll get into the distinctions of the difference of those, is that it's breaking the narrative of modern day life. And when somebody threatens that narrative, it puts them in a real questioning phase, I find, because they're not sure how to take that decision you're making. Especially, I use myself as an example of having a solid 9-to-5 job, making a great salary and living, medical benefits, everything that somebody would consider this is a stable life. Why break this up? And as you were pointing out, jumping to that call or listening to that call to go wander, I find the outside perspective I got from that was absolute confusion. People didn't understand why you would break those chains of some sort. Maybe they don't even look at it as chains to them, but it left them confused. However, upon returning from that wandering, somehow during that time period, people ended up getting it a little bit more. And we're like, wow, that's really cool what you did. Like, I'm really impressed. So at some level, maybe it bridged the gap for them and maybe got rid of that idea a little bit between being lost and wandering, and they see what I gained out of it as a person. And I was just wondering if you've had similar experiences with some of the people when you've taken off to Mexico or, Central America or Southeast Asia.
Oh, well, I guess, I'm often introduced as, Brett, the traveling friend. He's been everywhere, or hearing things like, oh, I live vicariously through your photos and stuff like that. And it's like, all you need is that ticket in the dream, It doesn't take much to get on an airplane, and you're not flying it, so you just gotta sip drinks and watch movies till you arrive and embark. Listen, it threatens a lot of people because I'm of the mind that you only get youth once. A lot of people work their buns off their entire lives, save up for retirement, and I think that although I've met some amazing, as we've spoken about, elder travelers, I think they were limited in certain scopes where 20-year-olds with no fear of death whatsoever, can really break out in a lot of ways that older people never could, whether it's, sleeping by the side of the highway for a night and waking up feeling fresh as a daisy, or whatever it is. There's not really like the filters of domestication that have set in. So I think it's set me off for a lifetime. There's a great word I heard in Fiji called vagabondage, that once you get a taste of it, it will call you for the rest of your life. And I think even just psychologically, we all budget for things in a lot of ways. So if you're doing the 9-to-5 job, as you were, and you know that you have that plane ticket to that far off destination, you live your life accordingly. You're a bit more conservative in your spending. Maybe you don't go out and drink as much. Maybe cut back on concerts, or things that maybe, push you along. But to me, just the knowledge of the ticket, just that, even just purchasing it is an endorphin release that I can't explain. It's mildly orgasmic, I gotta say. And all the weeks or months leading up to the departure is just, it's all, I wake up and I'm giggly. It's like Christmas, it's like being a kid again in a lot of ways. Because I see the transformation too of being a domestic. Maybe like you leave in the winter from a colder climate, and you arrive in a tropical place, and you're like, whoa, bugs, and whoa, food, and I have to be super careful of ice. And by the time you're done, as a guy, my facial hair is massive, my eyes are wily. It's like, bring it on, life. And I see that transformation, and it attracts me to other people that are also equally as wily-eyed. And I think there's such a huge support system when you get out there, culturally speaking, especially amongst Europeans or Australians that like get the gap year and are encouraged to travel from young. I think in America there might be a little bit more, like kind of a condescending ear of like, oh, well, you're not being productive. This is not a productive year for you. So what up with that?
That kind of goes in line with a theory that I've had that I kind of preach to a lot of different people when I have the opportunity or it comes up in conversation. I have no idea of the economic viability of this idea, but it sounds like a good idea to me in my brain, which is because of the gap year that you were talking about, and you meet a lot of Canadians on the road, you meet a lot of Australians on the road or certain European countries, whether it's their rite of passage or something that just gets passed down in some generation, that this is what you do. I feel like Americans would benefit from something like that. And if it was a program that actually existed where you got a certain amount of money that you put away, whether it was a family or tax dollars or whatever the case be, and you have to mandatorily travel for a year. I don't care where you go, but you're not allowed back within the borders for a year. If you spend all your money in the first month because you want to visit you want to visit Monaco in Europe and gamble all your money away, guess what? You better figure out your living because you're not allowed back in the U.S. And I know that's a way fantasy type of idea, but I think that stretches the boundaries of a lot of things. And, we'll come back around to wandering, but I think that whole idea of being abroad offers so many values and virtues that you would not normally get out of, say, high school right to college. And it would give somebody that opportunity to maybe better focus what they want to study, what they want to be educated about, or if they do become educated about a topic they're still passionate about, it probably brings to life a lot more relationships that they created on the road. I just think it's about that connection and about that that relationship to what you're doing in life with what you've experienced in life.
Oh, indeed, man. It's very much like a kind of a suburban vision quest in a lot of ways, right? You got to break out the walls of your comfort zones. And I remember buddies out of high school, getting a chunk of change to travel, and they're like, oh, well, I'm going to upgrade my sound system in my car. And I'm like, man, do you realize for that same $3,000 how amazing your journey could be in some faraway land? It blows me away how people kind of look at the notion of their identity within a place trying to be this big fish in a small pond, or acquiring things at a young age, where I'll never forget. I was at a bar not so long ago. Well, no, it was about 6 years ago, in New York City, and I met an old kind of an acquaintance, I guess, from high school, and he followed the lawyer track, never left the city, did exactly what his parents said. And, was successful. And I had met up with some friends from Fiji at the bar, and he's like, oh, what were you doing? And I was like, oh man, I know these guys from Fiji were, in my 20s, I was, being a promiscuous little monkey, and living on a small island in the middle of nowhere, scuba diving every day and massaging 18 to 25-year-old women, man. I mean, that's my youth, and you don't ever get that back in a lot of ways. And I think I would have to encourage, studying abroad is a really great way to even begin another adventure. So then you can legitimize it to your family. Is like, oh, I still want to stay in my studies. And then you go take off, take off a semester, go explore, go to 3-4 more other countries, get out there. And to the guys out there, you're not just going to study abroad. You're going to study lots of broads. Well, if you're lucky.
I think we need to come back to the beginning part of when I kicked off this podcast today, because we've thrown around these words already within the first couple minutes of talking interchangeably, and I don't necessarily know that they're interchangeable, and we probably each have our own definitions of them, or where the Venn diagram of these three words kind of cross and where they kind of separate, but